What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network for the top 10 decks in the Fusion Strike standard format of the Pokemon trading card game as of week 3. This will be the top 10 decks going into the week of November 29th. This week with statistics included. So these will be the power rankings of these decks, completely relying on the data that I have gotten from play.limitlesstcg.com and trainerhill.com. So I'm very excited for this week's video since these top 10 decks actually have evidence and statistics supporting their rankings this week. And we'll also take a look and compare them to where I had them last week, just based on my opinion. Last week's video did include deck lists. We won't have deck lists today, but as always, you can find all of my deck lists over at PokemonCard.io. And if you need PTCGO codes or physical Pokemon card product, you can check out PotownStore.com and CardTrooperGames.com and use code Celio for 5% off at both of those wonderful websites. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for daily Pokemon TCG content and leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you think about the top 10 decks this week. And now let's get into how we're going to rank them. So I filtered trainerhill.com to give me all of the tournaments between November 13th and November 28th with 64 or more players. This will not include any tournaments held past 6 p.m. Eastern on November 28th, since that is when I put together all of this data. So there were 20 tournaments that fell into this filter of being held between the 13th and the 28th and having 64 or more players on play.limitlesstcg.com. I will be ranking the decks based on their finishes, with top 16 being the lowest finishes. So their total top 16 finishes, and then I will also show you how many of those were top 8 and how many of those were first place finishes. And then we have the win rates of those decks according to Limitless and Trainer Hill, and those win rates are tiebreakers if the decks are otherwise tied on their top 16, top 8, and first place finishes. To probably nobody's surprise, we have number 1 being Mew Vmax. So Mew Vmax in this data of 20 tournaments between 13th and the 28th with 64 more players, Mew Vmax has 63 top 16s. 29 of those top 16s went on to be top 8s, and 6 of those top 8s went on to be wins. Mew Vmax has a win rate of 56.40%, which is very good. That's, over 50% is good, and 56.40 is pretty high. And if you're interested in seeing exact matchup win rates and stuff like that, you can check out trainerhill.com for more information on that. But I don't think it's any surprise Mew Vmax is doing this well. And of course, something to take in that's kind of a third variable is the popularity of decks. But as decks are proven to be good, they stay popular, or they become popular, or they gain even more popularity. So popularity is something you really have to take into account, but it's very hard to take it into account in the statistics unless we're doing success rates and day 2 transfer rates of the decks, which is a little harder to do with all these different size tournaments and different phases and different tournament structures, and that's a lot easier to do when we're doing like regional championships and international championships. But I do think this data is valid, putting Mew Vmax at number 1. I don't think anybody without data is putting Mew anywhere else than number 1, and I'm not surprised that the data is also showing that Mew Vmax is number 1. Next at number 2, we have Single Strike Urshifu Umbreon with 40 top 16s, and 21 of those top 16s turned into top 8s, and 1 of those top 8s turned into a win. 1 win is not too shabby. It's hard to win tournaments. Not every deck is going to be able to win tournaments. Mew Vmax does have that 6 win count very high out of reach, though, for other decks to match, and Single Strike Urshifu Umbreon has a 51.10 win percent, which is a bit above average if we're saying that 50% is the average. Number 3, Suicune Ludicolo has 28 top 16s, so I think you'll notice a pretty large drop of the placements between first and second, and then again between second and third. Suicune has 28 top 16s, 20 top 8s, and 2 wins, with a 56.70% win rate. high. It's a little bit higher than Mew Vmax's, but not really statistically significant. It's not significantly different than Mew Vmax's win rate, but it is the second highest win rate we'll have on this list today. So definitely nothing to scoff at there from Suicune Ludicolo, and I did think these three were the best decks before looking at the data, just by feeling how they play and their matchups, and just the deck's overall strength intrinsically. Number 4, we've got Jolteon Vmax. I'm really happy to see Jolteon Vmax performing well. It's one of my favorite decks to play, and I think it's like, I love the damage spread sniping play style like that, and I also love the tanking and Cheryl play style from formats ago when it was like Acerola and Max Potion. And so I'm really happy to see a deck like Jolteon Vmax performing well. It has 25 top 16s, 16 of those turned into top 8s, and one of those turned into a win, and it has the highest win rate according to TrainerHill.com that we will be looking at today here on the top 10 decks list at a win rate of 57.60%, which is really high. That's really, really good. Next, we've got Leafeon Vmax at number 5 with 18 top 16s, 8 of those turned into top 8s, and 1 of those turned into wins, with a 52.60% win rate. Nothing too shabby, a little higher than Single Strike Urshifu, but also not higher than the others. But you'll see here, I think you can kind of separate these into tiers. Mew Vmax with 63 top 16s. I think that's in a tier of its own. We'll call it tier SS, and then Single Strike Umbreon Urshi, and the next one down, tier S by itself. And then Suicune and Jolteon here are kind of looking like they're sharing the next tier, tier 1, tier A, whatever you want to call it. And then we've got the next one starting down here with Leafeon Vmax. Moving on to Zamasenta at number 6, 17 top 16s, 9 top 8s, and 1 win, with a pretty underperforming win rate though, 47.50% win rate. So that's definitely below average and the lowest one we're looking at here so far. But I still think Zamasenta, according to those top 16s, top 8s, and wins, it's probably going to find itself around the same tier as Leafeon Vmax if you're basing it off of these statistics. Next, we've got Rapid Strike Intellion Vmax, and I was surprised to see this pop up on the list prior to Rapid Strike Urshifu Intellion popping up on the list, because I had personally been rating Rapid Strike Urshifu Intellion higher, but I also think it's not getting too much play because people are scared, rightfully so, because of Mew Vmax. So Rapid Strike Intellion Vmax, a new deck from Fusion Strike as well, accompanying the other new deck Mew Vmax on this list today, with 14 top 16s, 3 top 8s, and 1 win, and a down the middle 50% win rate. And that kind of perfectly describes how I've been talking about the deck in the past 2 weeks of top deck videos, saying I think it's good. It's, it has top 10 potential, but I'm not really sure how much higher it can go. And that 50% win rate is kind of saying it all for me right there. Next, we've got Icerider Vmax making a comeback. There are lists including Suicune and lists not including Suicune. Icerider Calyrex Vmax has 13 top 16s, 6 top 8s, and 0 wins. Also with a 50% win rate according to the data pool. So Icerider Calyrex Vmax, I know Azul did pretty well with it, so he has a list up on his YouTube if you're interested. And like I said, I have a lot of lists on PokemonCard.io, and if you ever want even more, you can just go check out play.limitlesstcg.com. At number 9, the biggest surprise, possibly the biggest surprise of the top 10 decks, is Eternatus Vmax, Umbreon Vmax, being number 9. Based on 9 top 16s, 5 top 8s, and 2 wins, with a 51.70% win rate. So a higher win rate than Icerider, Rapid Strike Intellion, and Zamasenta, and also not really significantly different, but it is higher than Single Strike Urshifu Umbreon's win rate. So Eternatus is one of the 2 biggest surprises for me, and when I click the button and we go to the number 10, you'll see that Sylveon Vmax is here, meaning that Rapid Strike Urshifu is not. Which Rapid Strike Urshifu Intellion is the other biggest surprise for me not being here, according to the data. So Sylveon Vmax box is here with 9 top 16s, 6 top 8s, and 0 wins, with the second worst win rate on the top 10 list with a 47.90. I do want to note that Urshifu Intellion and Gengar Vmax Umbreon were both tied for 9th and 10th with 9 top 16s, but they had less top 8s, and Urshifu had less wins, Gengar had 1 win, but they both had worse win rates than Eternus Vmax and Sylveon Vmax. I think Gengar Vmax is about 46%, and Urshifu Intellion was 46%, and Gengar Vmax was 44% win rate. So they got knocked out based on those tiebreakers, but they were very close in the running. So this is the top 10 for this week based on placements of the past few weeks and the win rates that the decks are having in Play.Limitless TCG tournaments with 64 or more players in them. And here we have a look. We'll compare it to my top 10 from last week. So on the left is my top 10 from last week, which was not based on data. That was just based on my opinion on the format and the competitive metagame environment. So the top 3, I had them pretty good, but I also think it's kind of easy to guess those 3, right? To me, at least, it was obvious that those 3 were the best, and the data agrees with me there. Leafeon and Jolteon, I got a little bit of a flip-flop there. Because of Single Strike Umbreon Urshifu's popularity, I gave Leafeon just a little bit of a heads up, or a little bit of a notch up on Jolteon Vmax because it had a better Single Strike Urshifu Umbreon matchup, but Jolteon has a better Mew Vmax matchup than Leafeon, and that shows to be important here. With Jolteon and Leafeon just swapping places from my list last week. Number 6, you'll see Urshifu Melanie was pretty high for me, and it's not even on the top 10 this week. It's number 11. Zacian Zamasenta moves up just 1. Dragapult's not on the list at all. Rapid Strike Intellion Vmax surprisingly moves up a bit for me. And Urshifu Moltres, I believe in the data, is just kind of lumped into Urshifu Intellion, so that's not even a factor here this week. So Jolteon moves up from last week, Leafeon moves down, Zacian and Intellion move up, and then Icerider, Eternus, and Sylveon are new on the list from last week. And like I said, we had 11 and 12 being tied for 10th place, but on win rate, Sylveon won out there. And then Urshifu Intellion had the next best win rate with 9 placements, and Gengar Vmax had the next best win rate after that with 9 placements. And do remember, this is only Play Limitless tournaments with 64 or more players, so that is weeding out the smaller tournaments to keep this data valid. That's all I have for you today. Please leave any comments, requests, suggestions, criticism, compliments, anything you have in the comments down below. I do enjoy reading through all the comments. Even if I don't get back to everyone, I do try my best, and it really helps spread this video to new viewers if you leave a like and a comment. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.